on that. And hopefully when recording the session, we'll also be able to use this conversation opportunity for future discussions on this topic. So for those who I don't know, my name is Cindy Kane, and I'm serving as the interim leader in the Office of Teaching and Learning, as well as my regular appointment as special assistant to the provost. So for anyone who doesn't know what special assistant means, sometimes it means a lot of things. And this semester it means a focus on this topic of our remote teaching and learning environment. So I'm really pleased to be with you today. Our topic is focused on hearing from our students, and we have our student panelists with us, so we'll get to them next. But I wanted to start by talking a little bit about student engagement. And we hear this phrase a lot in education, right? The student engagement. And so the context for what that actually means has been the subject of some really important research in a number of areas of scholarship. But one frequent area is in what's called the National Survey for Student Engagement, which some know as NSSE. Bridgewater participates each year in NSSE, so this material is pretty familiar to a lot of folks. And I wanted to just highlight a few components of student engagement to give us a little bit of context and share some of the foundations that I'm working with around this topic. So the first component of student engagement that's explored in NSSE is academic challenge. We should be happy about that, to hear that, right? So academic challenge and the components of that using this model are everything from higher order learning to reflective and integrative learning, learning strategies, and quantitative reasoning are the four components that they measure. I want to frame this academic challenge priority because one thing we're going to talk about from our students is learning about academic challenge and their experiences with that concept in a remote environment. So we're going to talk about ways that their faculty helped navigate academic challenge over the course of a remote semester. The next component of student engagement is learning with peers. And the aspects of this piece that NSSE highlights are the value of collaborative learning, not surprised, and the value of discussions with diverse others. And so during our discussion, we're going to talk a little bit about ways faculty help to establish collaborative learning environments, and also ways that they helped students interact with each other and develop connections. The third piece of student engagement is about experiences with faculty. And this piece has also two components from NSSE's model. One is student-faculty interaction, and the second is effective teaching practices. So we're going to talk together about ways that faculty helps to foster interaction between themselves and students in class. And the final piece is going to be talking about campus environment. With our current remote model, our campus environment is our online environment. So we're going to talk a little bit about, from the student perspective, about the quality of interactions that have happened over the remote semester, as well as ways that faculty were able to communicate a caring and supportive environment. So over those four components of student engagement framed by NSSE, we're going to talk now about how those components translate into student experience with online teaching and learning. A lot of the discussion in higher ed goes to this either or debate about, which is better, right? Online learning or face-to-face learning. We're still going to have that debate as we navigate through this, I'm quite sure. But today we're here to talk about how to make the online context even more effective in ways that our students have experienced this topic as well. So our students that are here today, we've got four. Two of our students are part of the Office of Teaching and Learning Pedagogic Partners Program, and two additional students that are talented student leaders that are joining us for this panel of four. So I'm going to try in the Zoom world to spotlight video. So give me a second, and I'm going to spotlight some video. So you introduce, let's see, add spotlight. Here we go. Oh, yep, she's learning. All right, I'm going to find you in my grid. And then as our students come on the screen, I'm going to ask them to just introduce themselves briefly with with name, with major, and expected dates of graduation. So I'm going to ask Manuel to get us started.
Hi, my name is Manuel Pina. My major is chemistry, and I'm expected to be graduating on May 2021.
Excellent. Manuel, thank you for being here. Lucy. Lucy, you're muted.
Yeah. All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Lucy. I'm an English and secondary ed major, and I'm a sophomore, so I expect to be graduating in 2023.
Thank you. Vic, how about you next?
Hi, I'm Vic. I'm a secondary ed and history major, and I'm supposed to graduate in 2023.
Excellent. And Aaron.
Hello, my name is Eamon. I am a senior, however, I'm graduating in spring of 2022, and I'm a strategic communications major with a double minor in public relations and psychology.
Excellent. Thank you for being here today. As I mentioned on the outset, the student perspective on online learning ranges widely based on who you ask, right? It's all an intersection of the student, what they bring to a certain class. And so we know very well that we cannot assume that these 4 students are speaking on behalf of the entire student body. However, we do know that all 4 of these students have important experiences that we can benefit from learning. So getting started, and our first question is going to focus on the first component of academic challenge. And we're all here together to support student experiences that facilitate learning, and academic challenge can really be at the heart of that area of focus. So I'm going to ask our student group first. When you think back to this past semester, I'd like you to identify one thing that a faculty member did that helped you to learn most effectively. And we're going to start with Lucy for this question.
Awesome. I'm not muted anymore, so that's great. Okay.
You're fine.
This semester, I had a class where a lot of it was discussion board based. In fact, the assignment every week was to post a discussion board in response to a reading that we had to do. And at first, to me, it seemed really repetitive, and it almost seemed like busy work as I was doing it. Everyone saying their opinions about what we were reading and how it connects to Freud. And it started to get kind of monotonous for me. And I was wondering, God, why am I doing this for a 200, 300 level course? But when the semester was over, I actually attended that professor's Office of Teaching and Learning presentation about their teaching method, where they explained that the entire time I had no idea, but they were using scaffolding, which I am just now aware of as a secondary ed major, but I obviously couldn't see it when it was there. So how much do I really know? But she explained to other professors that what she was doing was building up our knowledge over the semester. It started out just, analyzing Freud. That was the baseline. And then we were slowly applying his method and his theory to every discussion board post that we were doing. And I had no idea that that was the effect that it was having, but I could see it in my final paper. I looked back at my work and I was like, yeah, this was scaffolding. I did have this tier-based learning experience. And I feel like the only way that it possibly could have been more effective was the professor to say that to their students, to share with them that this is the reason why the discussion boards are tiered in this way, or why they might seem repetitive. Sharing the explanation behind that to me really would have helped, because then I wouldn't have been doubting them so much and being like, well, this is repetitive, or well, this is busy work. That would have been out of the way. And I probably would have put even more effort in.
Thank you. That is really helpful, and also helps me understand why some things went wrong with my graduate class last semester. So appreciate that knowledge very much. One big component of academic challenge is also just figuring out how to navigate through significant workload. I've heard from some students that were really overwhelmed because they didn't expect the amount of work involved in a mostly remote semester. So I'm hoping that one of you can answer the question. I'm actually going to go to Manuel to see if you have any insight on the managing workload part of navigating academic challenge.
I believe for most people during the semester, and it was like a lot, like we had a lot of work to do, and it was really difficult, mostly because we couldn't like manage our time right. Like I have talked to professors and students, and like that has been like the one of the biggest issues like that I think everyone has faced. And like I had two different classes this semester that had like two different approaches to this like problem. One class, it was supposed to be it's a 300 level class, so it was supposed to be a lot of work. We were supposed to do a lot, but the professor went a different route. Like she thought that by decreasing the amount of work and by focusing on specific things that we were supposed to cover, that we would get more from that than by doing a lot of work at the same time. By doing that, I actually find out at the end, I believe that we kind of like covered some specific things really well, and we were able to understand those things really well. And most students were able to take a lot from that. But also I had another professor that had a completely different approach. She, on the other hand, she gave us a lot of work, but at the end of every week, she would ask us to write a summary of things we understood and things we didn't understand. And even like if there was work that we were supposed to do, and if by any chance we were not unable to understand the work we were supposed to do for that like specific assignment, she would ask us to ask her the questions about the assignment that we didn't get, and then only then go back and do it after another explanation from her or extra help. We would go back and do the assignment. It was much more work, but she was much more like active. She was like helping us in a individual basis, and sometimes even with groups, and that helped a lot, even though we had much more work to do for that specific class.
Interesting. So the contrast sounds like your professor in the second example, even though the volume seemed higher, they helped you understand the meaning, similar to what Lucy mentioned as well. So thank you both for those examples. Vic, do you have anything to add on this before we move to the next question? She's building suspense. Okay. I would love your insight to be posted in the chat because she's having some issue with unmuting. And we're going to go to the next question, which is going to focus on the second component of learning with peers. So we know that learning with peers is another important aspect of student engagement. And even in a remote setting, we're trying to learn how to best facilitate interaction, discussions between students, and try to develop a collaborative learning environment. So I'm going to go to Eamon when I ask the question of what is something that was effective for you or made a positive difference for you in connecting with students in your classes?
Yeah, when I first saw this question, the first thing that instantly came to mind, this past semester, I had a communication class, Communication for Nonprofit. And essentially, the class wasn't necessarily built upon small assignments focusing on different things. It was each week we were building up to a real world goal of working with Father Bills in Mainspring. But the collaboration came when we had one consistent group that we were working with the entire semester. And I really felt the benefit of, if we were to do group work, having a set group of people that we were working with consistently. That way, we were able to build a sense of camaraderie and friendship and motivation amongst each other throughout the entire semester. And yeah, at the beginning, we had to deal with that kind of like awkward little small talk, getting to know each other, that little thing. But as we went on in the semester, we didn't have to deal with that kind of awkwardness that tends to happen every time you're in a new group. And especially online, it can be very difficult to kind of get over that sense of, having to get to know these people. So I think that when it comes to, student engagement and collaborating on an academic level, the consistency among who you're working with, I felt was much more beneficial. And in terms of Blackboard and the discussion boards, I think that as a collaborative, student engagement and kind of connecting with students, at least from my experience and from my peers, using that to collaborate with other students isn't as effective as kind of the pseudo face-to-face that Zoom or Blackboard Collaborate offers. Like Lucy's example of, using it for like general assignments, I found much more effective than, okay, post this response And then a lot of the times when you ask, oh, and then respond to 3 of your peers, they tend to kind of be the same thing, and it doesn't really add on anything of the whole, oh, I really liked your answer, so and so. So I think that it is more effective to collaborate face to face on Zoom and have that kind of actual interaction rather than behind the screen on the discussion boards.
Gotcha. So some may say, I mean, based on your example, that a consistent group, you got a deep connection to a smaller number, but you might have missed out on connections with the full course. So I want to add that, it may be just depending on your objectives for the course, and that you probably accomplish one of 2 possible goals when it comes to connecting with students, right? Deep with a smaller group versus broad with a larger group. And I think it's a great way to illustrate, instead of the broad base, you have to get to know everybody, that sometimes we have to make some choices. So thank you. I'm going to move to question 3 in the interest of time, and want to focus on experiences with faculty. So we talked first about connections between students, and now I want to talk about connections between faculty and students. So we know how important it is for students and faculty to communicate, but we also know that this is challenging in this remote environment. I know that even as someone whose full-time jobs in being an administrator, email as the pipeline to the rest of the BSU world is a really tough way to operate. And I know that all my colleagues and that lots of folks on this call that are nodding enthusiastically also probably agree that the volume of email has made communication really challenging. However, it is sometimes the lifeline we have to be connected to each other. So if Vic is able to unmute, I might want her to start with this question to get a chance to chime in on the question of, can you talk about one thing you've seen that was effective in facilitating communication between you and your faculty?
Yeah, so when I had professors that would, sorry, my dog is so annoying, he's barking. But when I had professors that would answer my emails quickly, or they would have like separate office hours and we could go to them, and they, even just to talk, like we would talk about the subject, and then we would talk about, so it was education class, and we would talk about personal experiences in the education class. And like we would talk about our high school experiences, like all the students, and we would talk about different things and how to solve those issues in the classroom. So I thought that was really helpful to talk about it. It wasn't related to the subject material, but it was still helpful because it's things that are going to come up eventually in our careers.
Excellent, thank you. So communication that takes place in response to questions you might prompt, as well as communication that takes place on a range of other topics as well. That's a lot. It's a lot to ask, but it's great to know that you have some good examples. I'm curious, either Lucy or Manuel, if you've got anything you'd like to share that are specific examples of what made communication effective. Lucy, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, so I think something that you really brought up that's so important, not just to faculty, but also to students, is just like the amount of emails that we get every day. And it's super hard to navigate because at that point, it's just like, oh, so much, what do we do? Something that I thought was super helpful, and I've noticed other professors are using because they've communicated with us how they organize, is that Outlook comes with some really helpful features like adding categories to emails and applying rules. So that way, as soon as the email hits your inbox, it's automatically put in a folder. Or if you create a rule where the email has the subject this word or has the content this word, it can automatically be starred. Or let's say you're not interested in opening any emails that have no subject line. You told your students that's really important and they didn't do it. You can send it automatically to spam. Like, I think that there's so many resources that we have in organizing email that we just kind of have to investigate more, because I know that when I was in high school, I did not use Outlook and I had no background in it. And there's a lot of really nifty tools that I've just discovered. I love organization. And so that's really been helping me out. The labeling, categorizing, putting stuff into folders. There's a way to automate all that, so that way you're not going to have to do all that busy work. Outlook will do it for you. Another thing that I thought was super just personal and helped me connect with the faculty was I had one professor who called off class, and instead what they did was call each individual student for 10 minutes to see how they were going along with their final research project. To me, that meant a lot because they got to hear my voice individually instead of just like an email saying, oh yeah, it's going well. And we get to talk about just, how life is going, especially under these extenuating circumstances. It was super, I feel like, thoughtful to be having that real personal connection with people who are going through something unprecedented. And so I really appreciated that.
Well, thank you. And Manuel, anything to add before we move on?
Yes. So like one of the things that happened this semester, it's basically like I have this really good relationship with one of my professors, and she was like asking me for opinions on like stuff that I believe that could be done and to help students like go through like this process and like this like difficult times we're going through. And while we were talking about the fact that sending like individual emails or like calling out students that are like kind of falling behind. I know that that's like something that's difficult to do, and like professors have a lot of students. There's a lot of things going on, and like it's a really difficult thing. But we talked about that, and like she came to the like she was like, I'm gonna do it just to like see how it works and if it can help other students. After she did it, like the response that she got from students was like much greater than the response she got when she sent the general email to all the students together.
Mhm.
Because students normally tend not to respond to emails that are general, and like if it's not specific, if it's not touching them, they will stay behind even though they need the help. After she did that, she got a lot of more responses, and the students that were falling behind kind of told her the reasons why, and it was
Mhm.
much more it was easier for her to help them then after like she had done that. I understand that again, it's really difficult to send a lot of emails and getting the feedback, but if I believe that if the goal is to really help, and the goal is to really touch someone, knowing that these are difficult times and that we are going through difficult things, and that just by like saying hi, how are you doing, is there anything that I can help with, can make a huge difference on the student's life. It can help a lot of what they're going through. Like just like doing it, like even though it's a lot, it could be really helpful in a classroom setting, in the current situation we are going through. And that was really helpful for her and for the class. So I believe it's something that could be done. It's a lot, but it definitely could be done.
Excellent, thank you. It's important that what you shared is a way of telling students that they are noticed and they are seen. And it's very hard to see people sometimes in this environment. It's also easy to hide. So if I'm having a rough day and I turn off my camera, you don't necessarily see how I look or my reactions, and I'm just able to hide. And if I'm just not seen, then the next steps are really so important. And that actually leads us really nicely into our next question, which is the last piece about the campus environment and the fact that our campus environment now is largely remote. I'm hoping that we could broaden this theme of any of you being able to offer us some suggestions for how faculty can communicate their positive intention to send care and concern to students, or establish an environment that is supportive. So if you could focus on one thing that you think really helps communicate to students that you really are there to support their learning, that you want a campus environment that is supportive, we would really appreciate it. So I'm going to start with Eamon on this one.
Yeah, the first thing that comes to mind when I think of this is I was in Stats for Psych this past semester, and I fell behind. I was struggling. I'm a student leader. I had a lot on my plate, and for a little bit, my academics fell on the back burner, and I needed to catch up. And I reached out to my stats professor, and she set up individual office hour meetings outside of her hours. And she was super accommodating. After it pretty much explained everything that was happening, she connected me with resources on campus. And I think the biggest thing is like meeting the students halfway was like really, really crucial for me, because sometimes that needs to happen. And I think that what really made me feel supported was after the fact, when I caught up, she was still checking in, and we had that consistent conversation and dialogue between us. And she also would frequently just hold office hours at like 7, 8 o'clock at night. She would poll us to see when works for us rather than works for her. And I really appreciated that, because my normal 9 to 5 isn't just classes, it's meetings throughout my other student involvements, it's being on duty as an RA, it's internship hours, it's working. So being able to meet me halfway and other students in the class halfway was like really effective and really showed that she cared, and she tailored individual office hours to our needs, which was, I thought, really awesome and really made me and others feel supported.
Excellent. I've heard a lot from faculty colleagues about what they've learned in this remote setting about communicating care and concern, and thinking like, well, I've always been saying that I'm caring and concerned for student success, but I want to demonstrate that to them in a way that they will hear. I think a lot of that starts with the first week of classes, and starts with how you start off with a new group. So I'm curious if any of you have had examples you might be able to share that meant a lot to you, for a way that a faculty member might have started in creating a supportive environment with your class. Anybody have anything to offer on that? Lucy, go ahead.
Okay, so as I said, English and secondary ed, and my minor is history, so I'm like all into the humanities. And so a lot of humanities courses depend on student discussion. And so what would happen is we would have these conversations that, sometimes they touch on more like, I don't know what you want to call it, like hard topics. So usually they're not supposed to be hard. They're just something that everyone should consider. And yet there's still like a stigma around it. And we have to go and navigate that as students. And I thought something really awesome that my professor did was point out when students made comments that were maybe it could be more nuanced. They were making a generalization. They're using absolutist terms, and say, you know what, that's actually not the case. Or when students were having a discussion and they were not able to respectfully disagree, then professor chimes in and it's just like, hey, wait, and it's hard to do for anyone to hold themselves accountable in that position and say like, okay, it's my job to be like this. I need to point this out, just either for historical accuracy or about just like being sensitive of the historical context of a piece of literature was super important. And a lot of times the professor was speaking up about race and racial issues. And I can understand that, like, as a white woman, does this personally affect me in the sense that, is the professor speaking out for me? No, but it's important because you have to recognize that they have to be held accountable for every single student that they have. And it means a lot to show that they are speaking up for every single student.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I think establishing that climate is so important. We are going to move to our wrap-up question, where I'm going to ask each student to leave us with one recommendation that they would like to communicate to our faculty as we prepare for a new semester of teaching online. So one recommendation, and one thing you're hoping that all of us will avoid as we go into this next semester. Once we get a comment from each of our 4 panelists, we're going to wrap with asking Lucy to talk briefly about the Pedagogic Partners Program. So for the last question, I'm going to start with Manuel.
So one thing that I would recommend, it's based on my experience with the professor that I was helping. It's basically communication. I think the most important thing that a professor can do is try to engage. Not it doesn't even have to be by email. Like even in class, reassure your students that you can be there for them if they need. Even if it's just for a meeting, even if it's during the office hours or during a meeting that you guys set up afterwards, it doesn't matter. Just reassuring that they can count on you. It just that tells a lot to a student. For me, the past semester, I talked to a lot of my the other students, so I could give feedback to my professor. And one of the things that I kind of felt it was the biggest issue for them and for me in some cases was that the lack of response, or that feeling that professors say that they were there to help, but at some point they would not answer to the email or not really be there in ways that the students really needed. So like reassuring that they can be there and being there for the students, I think that would be the biggest thing that a professor can do during this time, especially because like we are all far away from each other, we can't see face to face, and that like kind of causes like that sense of like there is a separation bigger than that we actually have, and like that's always like a problem. At least that's the biggest issue that I think could be like solved and like could be made better. One thing that I hope like my professors don't do, this is actually let me see. Like there wasn't like many issues that I faced. Like the only thing that I would say is like maybe like if I ever like ask my professor something through email, not like so they don't forget about me, because like I know that they go through a lot, and like they may forget the email. That's the only thing I would expect, like that I wouldn't want to happen. But like other than that, it's fine with me.
It sounds like effective communication is, something you hope for and might be able to be navigated through starting off the semester with clear discussion of expectations for what to expect. I
Yes.
know for my class, I, teach in the evenings and told folks that, I have a full-time job. So if you're looking for me, my emails are going to come at weird hours of the night, and that's just the way it's going to be. So being able to put that out there from the beginning, I think was really helpful. And it sounds like that might be able to help a lot of students navigate as well. Thank
Yeah,
you.
like
Thank you.
uh, just like one like about the emails, like one day I emailed one of my professors at like 4 like 3 a.m. Yeah, and the other day she was like, oh, were you awake at that time? I was like, I had just like finished one of my papers for another class. And she was like, she just like went on and on about the fact that I should not like be like up at that time, and like she was like
She's right.
just like so yeah just like so like trying to make sure that I was well, and like just like saying the stuff that I needed to hear, even though like I had a lot to do, but like she was just like showing that she cared and she didn't want me to go through all of that.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Let's go to Vic next. One quick thing to do and one quick thing to avoid.
One thing, this might be like controversial between like some students, like they might not agree with me, but I think requiring to keep your students like camera on is good. Like I had this one class where my professor didn't require that, didn't mention it, but she didn't have her camera on either. And like I wasn't gonna turn my camera on and like be weird. Like everyone, no one has their camera on, so I'm not gonna be the only one like sitting there. And not one person, not even the teacher has their camera on, which it was still an amazing class. Like she was a great teacher, but like it just felt like I was like listening to a radio. Like it was like not as many people participated. I feel like when you can't see them, like it just like looking at a gray screen on Zoom. Like I don't know, it's just like it was weird. But I feel like requiring like cameras on, it's like not like a bad idea. I think I like that. And one thing, I hope that professors change. Well, I had one professor when I was when I had COVID, they still marked my assignments late, and I told them like I literally for 2 weeks I didn't do anything because I was like sick and I was in bed and I slept for like 14 hours a day, and I was like they could have been more lenient and like gave me like my deserved grade without a late mark, but like it was whatever then. But yeah, I feel like they could have been more lenient with like late assignments when I was sick.
So discussions of cameras on or off was a big topic for us at the December Teaching and Learning Conference. So I actually have some great resources I could share with anyone who's interested. Was the recording of a session that we did at that conference that talked about equity issues relating to cameras and the need for camera related approaches that honored a lot of the challenges that our students might be facing. So look for that from OTL soon. We're working on captioning those recordings before they go out, but that will be coming for sure. And then policies relating to late grading has also been another big topic. So Vic hit two of the all-star policy conversations right in one comment. So thank you for that. We're going to go next to Eamon.
I'll keep it short and sweet. One thing to remember is, our academics and the one specific class isn't the end all be all of what we are doing.
What?
I know, shocking. But I had a professor and I was very candid. I was like, I just finished up my time as president of my fraternity. I'm an RA, orientation, the list goes on. And they really didn't see that as a legitimate issue. or a legitimate reason that I was falling behind or that I was struggling because I had a lot. So just like classes aren't gonna always be the end all be all work, everything like that. And I think the biggest thing to avoid is in all, it's kind of relating back to what I had just said, like don't kind of have this air. This is because what this felt like in this one class is like this air of superiority with this one class over everything else. I think that it's very important, because I had other professors that kept a big like worldview of everything that was going on. And I think that keeping a wider perspective on everything that is going on is super, super important when starting any conversation in class. So that's
Okay.
what I have to say. Thank you.
I think keeping a wide perspective is something we all have to think about, right? With all the crises that we're facing, and how you translate that into getting things accomplished on a given day is challenging, right? Just like today is really challenging. So I appreciate that addition. Lucy, we're going to wrap up with you, ask you for your comment on that last question, and then a couple of words about the Pedagogic Partners Program.
Yeah, so okay, one thing I would say to remind yourself is that to get student engagement, you have to engage with the student, and that means accepting them as a multifaceted person where you're not just concerned about how their performance is in school, but also what kind of things are going on outside of the classroom, which can be taxing because that's just another expectation that's put on top of you in front of all these adaptions. But I think it's so important if you really want to get the most out of each student. And as to something I think would avoid would be to realize that these are new expectations that are being presented. And so don't be too hard on yourself in the sense that, wow, like, oh, I have so much that I need to improve on. I have no idea what I'm doing on the internet, what is going on. I've had the exact same feelings. And I feel like so long as the professor is honest about their experiences and how, acclimating to this new medium is just as difficult, if not more, for them than it is for their students, then it's just going to create even a stronger connection between the student and faculty. And so that's what I'm all about, because I'm going to be talking about the pedagogic partners, which I am one of them. And this is a really helpful way to get student engagement because it's the ideal, but it's not always the reality. If you are in a classroom, like Vic said, where it's not normal for everyone's cameras to be on, and you don't see students' visual body language or their gestures, their reactions to your pedagogic methods. And it's really hard to gauge, like, is this working? Is this not working? I don't really know. And then obviously students are usually not graded on the feedback that they give to a faculty. And so it might not be the most accurate, or it can just be really hard to gauge where they're at because they know they're not being graded for it. And so it's not going to be 100%. And that's what pedagogic partners like me are for. Essentially, we're just going to be part of your classroom. We're going to be having access to your Blackboard and being part of your class and seeing all the assignments, the structure, as if we were a student like anyone else. But the bonus is that you get to talk to us. And afterwards, we're going to tell you, first of all, like all the wonderful things that we're seeing, all the things that we thought were helpful. Like, I like that this folder is in such an accessible place, or I like that you post the lectures on Blackboard. It really helps me stay up to date with the classroom. And then, of course, there's always room for even more further improvement in pedagogy. And so that's just going to be, someone's humble student perspective being like, I found it difficult to access this document, or I was kind of unsure about this. And it's not a critique. That's not something that student partners are about, because we are merely just offering our own experience and advice as the laity, the common man who's looking at your Blackboard page. And what our shared objective is to make this semester as effective as possible. And so I would love to see more professors open that opportunity up for themselves and really consider having just one student where they get to, talk about and say, let's reflect on my pedagogy. Let's have a metacognitive moment here. And I feel like that can just help them so much in the long run. So hopefully in the spring semester, if anyone is interested, I would be so happy to work with you.
Metacognitive moments are going to be my goal for this week, right? Is to find more of those in my life amid all of the things that are going on. Are really helpful advice. If anyone is interested in talking further about these partnerships, our two faculty fellows for this semester are Michael Zimmerman and Andrea Kaysen. Both of them are going to be involved going forward in supporting these partnerships as well. But in the meantime, please feel free to reach out to me, and I'd be happy to talk through. While we're still on break, I can talk through what it might mean for your course. We are also going to try to add some more short-term partnership options, where in the past it had been the need you had to sign on with a partner for the long-term semester. Instead, we can easily focus on even just working with a student to help you get started with your course. If you just want to work together for January, that's fine. If you want to do something in the middle of the semester, we can do that too. But in this environment, we have to be flexible. That's been the mantra. And this program will be adapted to do that as well. So please feel free to reach out to me. With that said, I want to thank each of our student panelists. It was great to have you and spend time with you today. I want everyone attending to know that, the foundation they were given for this was to share their authentic experience as students, and to not feel compelled to speak on behalf of every student at Bridgewater. So, to close, I just want to emphasize that, there are many stories out there about experiences with online teaching and learning. So many of them are fantastic. So many of them also describe challenges, and working together this coming semester, I think we can really do a great job in helping to address some of the difficulties that we had this past semester and really make the impact that we're looking to make. OTL is here to partner with you in supporting that process. We're looking for your input on dialogues like this you'd like to have more often, and we're committed to significant partnership with our colleagues in the TTC as well as the College of Continuing Studies going forward. So we're all going to be working side by side, but please feel free to write to me and share your ideas going forward. With that said, we've reached the end of our time. For those who have to go, please feel free. But if it's okay with our students, I'd like to ask that you hang on if we could spend a minute on some questions. So I'm going to remove the spotlights. And just before we go, ask if there's anybody who might like to ask a question of one of our panelists. If you'd like to do that, please feel free to unmute and just say, hey. They're so smart. We've answered all the questions in 40 minutes. That's all it took, my friends.
I guess I'm wondering if moving things on, so we're kind of focused on how moving things online have made things more challenging. Has anything got easier? Has there been kind of new opportunities that your faculty you thought wouldn't have been able to do if this things wasn't online? Or did moving things online make things more convenient that wasn't the case before when things were in person?
Excellent question. Well, I'll give them a second to think. I'll think things I've heard so far have been that I get to wear sweatpants all the time. So I'll offer that. And that it's a really short commute between classes is another one, because I just go from, one Zoom room to the next. But aside from those two things, anybody have a thought to add? Vic, why don't you go ahead? And then Vic and then Lucy.
I feel like I've had a lot more assignments this semester than I have in previous semesters, but the time period of assignments, like they assign something and then we have a longer period of time to do them. I feel like that was really helpful to like give us more time to do research for papers and stuff like that.
Excellent. I've heard that too, where with discussion boards, where in class you might have to respond immediately, where with discussion boards you get a second to actually think about what you want to say. So thank you for that, Lucy.
I think something that's been an awesome resource this semester is having full access to the Academic Achievement Center online, because before you had to go on campus just to be able to meet with a tutor. I am a tutor right now, and so I get to work with all these students who wouldn't have otherwise met with me because they're commuters. And so they have this free resource where they can just reach out to another student and ask, hey, how's my paper looking? And I'm going to share it right with you on a Google Doc. It's instantaneous and we can work on it at the same time. It's really great technology. And so I would almost recommend, like, if there's a way that we can amplify that even more and let students know that's an opportunity they can take advantage of since they're online learners, that they can get that instant critique, feedback, support from another student.
Excellent. I know the AAC has worked really hard to pivot quickly to accomplish what you just described. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Anybody else want to chime in on that one? All right. Or other questions before we go? All right. Thad, thank you for that question. It was a really important addition. Excellent. Well, everyone, thank you so much for being here today. I hope that we see each other again through OTL circles, as well as anything else. And for our student panelists, I'm hoping that you will be willing to continue the conversation with us and continue the partnership, because we know you have a lot to offer this conversation. So thank you. Enjoy the rest of the OTI, and I'll look forward to working together for a successful spring. Take care.